increase in and actual user base has now moved from all of this to actual customer. And that has brought in a new set of challenges, a new set of technologies. And it's like here, what I normally say is our playing field keeps changing, right? And hence we have to relearn, unlearn old this thing and bring up new techniques, new tools, new processes, new innovations. And actually that is what now we are doing at UNO, where we are focused at more on a customer side, more ensuring that we are not building system for a back office first. We are building for a customer, and back office is just a outcome of or just to support that in post. So that is the way we are working on. And yes, I'll be happy and glad to hear new comments, new methodologies, and happy to unlearn and relearn. Thank you.
Learn, unlearn, and relearn. Thanks, Dinesh. I think both of it today, composition is very good. In fact, I think it's a pleasure for me to moderate because you were able to see there's two side of things. One is basically, we call it in tech, we call it a brownfield, where you have a lot of things to modernize, your core processes need to re-engineer, and there's a lot of new technology adoptions along the way, which carry a lot of definitely good war story, Darren, from your side. There's plenty of things to learn from your exposure and your experience of transforming from the traditional to the modernized kind of infrastructure, networks, and all these service and products as well. However, on the Dinesh side, there's a set of challenges as well. As a greenfield, a brand new company, brand new platform. The challenge itself will be at the tech life cycle, tech debt kind of things, because now you need to select the best tech to move forward with, because if not, it will limit your innovation, limit your creation of the products and services, like what you mentioned from the retail side of things. So probably I would like to bring in Darren in terms of to give a bit of insight on your journey, the transformation journey. How do you modernize your core systems? How do you actually manage EOLs, end of services, end of life products, the legacy equipment? How do you manage those things, Darren, in your organization?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And actually, I mean, when you cast it that way, I find myself in envy of Dinesh, because he doesn't bring along all the baggage that is associated with legacy things. So that sounds exciting. On the other hand, I would say the security crowd in general or at large, rarely is that made up of early adopters. Rather, security people are the ones who hang back at the edge of the road and they let people cross the road and until there's enough bodies in the road that it stops traffic, and then they can cross safely. So there's a sense that we don't like being early adopters. There's a comfort that comes from this is an old, known, beat up, battle tested kind of thing. But that's the fantasy of it. The reality is, yes, you do acquire tech debt. If you don't keep up, if you don't pay attention, if you're not making the investments in the business that need to be made, certainly there's a part of that everywhere I've been, including giant global retailers. You start to see it's still humans doing the same thing everywhere, making those similar decisions. I think part of it, though, is when you do have that opportunity to move forward with a new tech, it's been so long since you last looked at it that the things that were new and shiny and compelling, 10 years ago have either fallen away and burned up or have become mature offerings in and of themselves. And I think that there's a sense there that even my upgrade may still have a sense of history to it by bringing in something else that was battle tested and hardened. I think of, I was just thinking of a technology earlier this week, that when we look at ZTNA, Zero Trust Network Access, right? Somehow it's gone from marketing buzzword to actual products and solutions, right? In the space that it took for me to ignore it, and now there's some very compelling players in that space. So I don't have to bring along a sense of fearfulness or hesitancy in adopting a new technology that, okay, my tech debt has grown so big in this area that I feel pretty good about buying something that is, a more reasonable player for us. So, there's balance all the way through. We're always going to be making decisions and compromises and living with those choices. But I think it's interesting what Daresh has in that, as you're putting it, the green field, that seems so compelling. And yet at the same time makes me nervous and gives me hiccups just to think about it.
Yeah, I like the way how you elaborate things, because I think there's definitely not just the people element, there's a process and also technology. We need to look into the whole spectrum to be able to understand how to transform. And I think the key word just now is basically it's a progression over the perfection side of things. So you just progress.
Yes.
And then when you talk about the ZTA, I think I resonate really well as well, because when it comes to zero trust architecture, it's not really a tool that will, it's a stopgap kind of things. You cannot implement a tool saying that I am a ZTA organization, but rather it's towards various facade. That means you need to make sure your people has that ZTA kind of mentality. The process need to make sure there's a redundancy in terms of maker and checker, segregation of duties. And when it comes to technology, you have all these third-party management, external connectivities, monitorings, stuff like that. So it's actually the whole thought process in terms of how do you achieve zero trust architecture in your environment. And it's not, like I said, it's not a simplified overnight kind of tool deployment. I agree 100% from that standpoint. But yeah, let's hear on the greener posture on the other side of the field, Diresh. So tell us a little bit in terms of the green field, because we do know when it comes to onboarding technology now, we have seen so many new technology coming in. In fact, even from one segment or one sector, for instance, your payment, there's so many payment innovations. There's so many payments alternative channels. So how do you basically select and pick and choose your technology stack to ensure your sustainability in the long run, and at the same time, you will not compromise, all this customer demand and also the security side of things, Diresh?
So definitely new technologies come almost every month. You will find new companies, new technologies coming in. We work on a concept called champion challenger, where you can implement one technology, and I can implement a challenger technology and see whether it can take over the older one or not, right? That is a methodology which both in mindset and in actual technology landscape we have to use on a daily basis to ensure that we are always at the edge of the front edge of this thing. But Darren, having said that, I think so it doesn't take too long for any organization to become a legacy, right? You implement a system, and probably in current years, it'll take about 2 years to become a legacy platform, right? So unless you are going to be agile, you are going to be having various methodologies of future safing yourself, right? Whether you use champion challenger methodology or whether you use cuttings coming in regularly, because once you implement something, you will always move on to the other items. Now, once you move on to the other items, will you have time to go back and revisit the old implementations or old stuff done, right? And that is which is a constant challenge in the technology world, because always technology gets monitored by the fact, what did we bring new to the table? What are the new features? What are the new things? Nobody talks about, what did you do to the old one? right?
Mm.
You enhance the old one, fine, but that didn't.
Backwards to, that's why we get to talk about it, but all the time.
And then I think the important part, as long as you are future proofed in the long run, I think it's very important. Vision delta that you can play with in terms of defining calibrating to your use cases, to your scenarios that you need to use. And along the way, you will find sometimes that certain technology to be sunsetted because it's probably not aligned to your corporate vision in terms of how you capitalize your customers, or even to the matter of it's not suitable for your own environment. And I think one point I want to write on, Diresh, from your standpoint earlier, that you mentioned just now about the safety net, right? So basically, a lot of people talk about the safety net. So for you, you said you don't really have that kind of safety net compared to the brownfield ones. However, with the safety net, sometimes people tend to be wary, and they are quite risk centric in terms of how high they can jump based on the safety net capability. But rather for you are like free fly, you can walk as high as you want, because there's nothing will stop you from that standpoint. So we are talking about the risk side, Diresh. Earlier you mentioned another time about the technology that you onboard, whether it's emerging technology. And we know most of the technology onboarding, as much as we want to actually modernize our systems and modernize the organization, but the core reality is basically to cater for the new segment, new customers, whether it's for the customer experience or all these customer requirements and customer demands, right? So how do you actually manage when it comes to all this? We're talking about cybersecurity as a main topic, but how about you manage in terms of the risk side of things? Because we know that when what you mentioned just now, the net is the risk management. So how do you manage in terms of innovating? Because sometimes if you said, all right, let's try with this platform XYZ, then when you onboard them, then suddenly they are compromised big time. Then your customers' information would be accessible on the public domain. So how do you manage those conversations, Diresh, from the technology risk and cybersecurity risk kind of standpoint?
Sure. So one, definitely when a product or a new technology is introduced, right, in a banking world, it will go through a significant risk reviews to ensure that we are not compromising things. Secondly, the way you architect the whole system is that, yes, you have independent authorities within your technology architecture, right? So you have tools which will take care of DLP, you have tools which will take care of your endpoint security, you will have various different technology security parameters built into your architecture that will ensure that, yes, the things are in control. And that is what becomes a safety net, right? For me, that yes, if something falters, I have a safety net to catch it. And once I catch it, I can fix the faltering software. The problem of security is mostly that, are we aware of what is a risk? Are we aware of what is a leak happening? Right? Most of the time, we only get aware when it becomes too big an issue, right?
Yeah.
So that is why it is important for us to have those checks and balance and controls and the tools available that can make us aware of anything which is not being done correctly in any of the new tools, new softwares, right? And architecturally, we need to build that thing. Now, a safety net can be on either side, right? So when you are flying high, you need a safety net below you, right? But when you are in ocean, you need a safety net ahead of you so that you don't get pulled into the ocean waves, right? So the key is where we put the safety net, what it allows us to do. Can it allow me to fly high and still be not afraid of falling back, because I know I have a safety net which will at least not kill us, right?
Yeah.
So, so that is a very important aspect to say how we build, what safety nets we build, right? Whether it's a mobile app, in mobile app, what kind of safety net I need to build. When it comes to enterprise solutions, what kind of safety net I need to build. Because when I bring in new technologies, they should always be covered by the safety net, definitely. And then they have their own controls and security features which will allow us to ensure that, yes, my things are covered. See, security is in a multifaceted area. You have technology-related security, you have employee-related security aspects, you have a customer-related security aspects, right? However good technology security you put in, if there are multiple employees who coordinate and do a fraud, right? That could be one risk that you are always worried about. Secondly, if like we are Uno Bank, which we are looking at focus towards unbanked population. Now, with that population, it comes a risk of not being aware of various practices. So they may not know what is phishing. They may not know what kind of social engineering is done. They may not know what kind of who can call them and ask them for their OTP, passwords, and everything, right? So your technologies have to be strong enough to ensure that does not lead to a compromise of your solution, right? And that is what we constantly think, and that is what all my innovation teams, which is the digital team, the banking, the technology teams, which is the enterprise-related implementation teams, the system managers, the business users are constantly having these kind of discussions, brainstormings to ensure that we are trying to cover all the aspects. And specifically in this area, I've seen bringing in champion challengers have helped us a lot. And it's really helping us a lot.
I think, the safety net ideology, I think, is quite important, because the analogy is basically you need to basically get the highest stakeholder approval in terms of the appetite statement, then you play within the threshold. And those kind of reporting need to be very transparent across the group, whether from the operation level all the way to senior management level. But I do, like I said, I do agree. You need to make sure you are very tactical in terms of where to deploy the safety nets and what kind of safety net that you need to cater for your appetite, innovations, and also your risk acceptance as well. Darren, I think from your side, I think what we heard from Diresh earlier, it's slightly on the innovations and everything. And we know that as a Chief Information Security Officer, you will have a lot of conversation with your team and then with your company in terms of adopting new kind of security mechanism. Because traditionally, like what we discussed, people always have this idea of defense in depth. You put all this critical information, sensitive data, PII into your database in your data center, and you ring-fence it with firewalls and data protection, DLPs, DRMs, and all these tools, right? But now, I think we see more and more people adopting third-party platforms, cloud computing, sometimes cloud storage. So how do you manage? Now, even when it comes to people working from home or working remotely, some of the sensitive data and confidential information is stored on a local drive. So as a Chief Information Security Officer, how do you tackle this kind of new potential exposure and vectors?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that I am still learning, but I have been impressed with since my arrival here, is how upside down and backwards a CDN or a delivery network is from anything else. It's not a bank, it's not a restaurant, it's not on e-commerce. And so, even the simple questions of, do you have firewalls? No. Do you have internet-facing servers? Yeah, about 30,000 of them. And so you immediately realize that the questions that we tend to ask each other around, can I trust you? Do you have a firewall? Do you have password policy? Do you have guard dogs? Whatever it is. In our environment, those questions become far less relevant. And what we have to do is educate the customer first as to, here's what we've done, here's what you're buying in terms of product and service, and here's why it's completely different than your set of questions that you would typically use to assess me as security. And one of those, I mean, you just asked it right there, is what about local files? There's really not a whole lot of risk there. You can't get to the delivery portion of the network from a local host. So so whether your fear is data exfiltration or malware coming in, it can't traverse the network. And so there's inherent built-in types of controls like that. We recently had a denial of service event, a distributed denial of service event against a customer in Asia, and the customer never even noticed it. It was one of the largest events ever recorded in the history of Earth, and then a month later we had another one twice as big, and again the same result. The customer never even noticed because of the diversity, the fault tolerance. And again, that is not something you would expect from every other network. It is how a CDN is built, and because of that, our security questions become different. So yeah, there's a sense, I don't mean to sound like a hubris, but there is a sense that you could bring in any device that's unknown, unmanaged, and maybe even unprotected, and still plug it into the network, and it's not going to do anything other than maybe to its local, subnet at best. The rest of the architecture is structured in a way that these are really smart people, and I would throw out that there's also. I've never worked in a company where this kind of intelligence in terms of geekiness and engineering and everything that comes with that is such a part of the user base. Usually, I've seen a dev group that sort of did things over here, but the rest of the users were just like all that we've ever seen, and in this company, half of the user base are really, really smart security people, and they bring that as not something that I have to train them on. They already got that. They already understood that. So again, I look to the human layer of the network to provide some controls and safeguards and protections that, again, are not typical or conventional at other places. So the questions themselves have to become different when you're assessing a new technology. And I think that is one of the things that digital transformation will bring, is we'll realize our questions are out of date, and we hang so much hope and faith in the questions that we've been trained to ask over the past 20, 30 years. And they're the wrong questions, because really what we want to know is, can I trust you? And that's true even in a zero trust network kind of access, is business to business, entity to entity. Let me know you're not going to leave me out in the cold when something goes wrong. And I think those are the kinds of questions I like responding to, is we're going to partner with you shoulder to shoulder whenever something happens. And, we got your back is really all that they need to hear.
Yeah, I think the key point you mentioned, you need to ask the right question, because like I said, when it comes to transformation, adopting new technology or even emerging technology, certain traditional security questions are no longer relevant for the new implementation or the new ideas and new design. And probably from that standpoint, we don't have much time to begin with. We're left with 9 minutes. If you have any question from the audience, do drop on the chat. We will take it on the fly. But afterwards, we do have allocated certain time to take the question and answer session separately as well. Dheeraj, I think just one point that I would like to leverage what Darren mentioned earlier. We're talking about the innovation from the customer side. And we do know customer experience is one of the most important thing when it comes to delivering your product and services. Now, customer, they want secure, they want the system to be secure, they want to make sure that they are easy, and at the same time they are easy to use and seamless, right? So they want to have all of this. So instead of even putting a one-time token, OTP, right, one-time password, they feel it's quite a problematic to ask additional process for their verification and authentication mechanism. They want everything to be seamless. Now, banking or even e-commerce company have introduced device fingerprinting, facial recognition kind of things to make the process even seamless, and within 1 or 2 clicks they can do their desired transaction. But now going back to your point just now, right, Dhiraj, how do you manage those things? Because some of those things will basically open up a different, not just traditional security vectors, but also to the new type. Because for instance, if you leverage on blockchain based authentication, where even the blockchain itself can be the source of your compromise, can be source of vectors if you don't understand it correctly, or you can't interpret it properly. So what is your take on that, Dhiraj?
So definitely in the new users or the current users, right, and especially the internet savvy, the young generation are very much in a fast moving world. So anything you ask them to take 2 steps, the question will be, why can't I do it in 1 step, right? And that is what every time we are working on, right? To say, okay, right now you still need to open an app and do it. Now there are new technologies which have come in, which will not ask the user to do additional steps, right? So, example, in the background, I can have various technologies running to see his behavior and see that, yes, behavior pattern is matching what it was earlier, right? So I don't need to do additional steps. Similarly, when the customer is talking, can I use voice biometrics to identify a customer instead of asking customer to key in his password, key in his OTP, and so on, right? Similarly, there are patterns which we develop, and today's AI, ML, and new technologies are really helping us in terms of identifying whether is there something off about this transaction, right? Is it out of fact? Is it out of his normal transactional behavior behind them? We are able to open these securely to higher amount technology game. It's a technology, risk teams, data science teams, digital teams, all of them have to join hands together to actually to bring the best experience, this thing to the customer, right? And that is where innovation leads to. A customer used to do this transaction in 5 steps. Can I make him do it in 1 step? Right? Now, yes, digital would say, yes, I want to do it, right? The data science needs to say, yes, I have sufficient data to say that, yes, this is what needs to be done. Risk teams have to say that what is the risk running. CISO teams and my technology information security teams have to tell me, yes, what are the technology risks into this. And then it will come down to the system managers or the technology managers to actually implement these technologies, right? So I'm saying this is a constant process, and this falls under the champion challenger league. And then I introduce it to the larger and larger segment and make it a champion, and then have a new challenger coming in, right? So whether it's technology, whether it's process, whether it's security, these methodologies, if we need to be open about these methodologies, otherwise it will not take us long time to become a legacy organization, right? So whether any new technology, you talked about blockchain, right? We talk about AI, ML, and then introduce them into a bigger arena.
Yeah, I think that is the way to do it. Seeing the time, we don't have much time, and I know this kind of conversation is very interesting, Darren and Dhiraj. We can continue another hour or 2 easily, leveraging on the same points. We do have people submit few questions. So I think before we continue to the question and answer session, we'd just like to give Darren and Dhiraj a bit of 1 or 2 minute key takeaway from the conversation. Then we jump into the Q&A session afterwards. So probably
sure.
Darren, yeah.
Yeah, I would say this. First of all, I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I love the opportunity to talk shop. And Duresh, some of the things you've said today completely resonated with me in that it shows me that people are still the same everywhere we go. Our technology's changed, and like we said, the playing field keeps changing. That's always going to happen. But it's the same players that seem to come out into the same roles, and I think that's what we have to protect against. So, in that light, I would say this: one of the things I always think about, and in terms of security, and we have that mantra that complexity is the enemy of security, and I think there's some truth to that. So that's why we look for simple or elegant solutions. My take is I always try to do essential, not exceptional. I'm never going to look for a single product to be the end all to all of the the data protection needs. Instead, defense in depth, cover the basics, make sure that we are not doing anything galactically stupid in terms of our processes and our other choices. So I focus on the essential, not the exceptional. And that would be one of the things that I really like to take away from every conversation is what are the thoughts that are being shared that really stick with me? And it tends to be the really simple things. So that's kind of where I would land on is this has been a great conversation. And in innovation, by itself, we can innovate great things, but if people don't use them, it doesn't mean anything.
Yep, that's very true. Diresh, how about yourself? Fruit of thought for them to take away and bring back to the organization.
Sure. So my normal thought process is always that yes, being as a CIO of an organization, I need to allow teams to fly high, right? And that is the reason of existence of technology teams, right? That we need to allow people to dream high. I need to allow people to come up with new innovations, fly as high as possible, right? Creating a safety net below it, right? So that even if the things fall, even if the things are not successful, it is really good state of the art today will become obsolete tomorrow, right? And we always need to keep that in mind. So we always need to be ready to change, to move forward, to introduce new challenges, to introduce new ways of thinking, right? I think so. My normal the biggest problem, what kind of knowledge they have, right? What kind of experience they have. And that is what is very critical for an organization to move forward. Similarly, creating a mindset or experience in your consumer's mind is extremely important, right? They should not be worried about saying, oh, I'm using Uno app, it can have a problem, I can lose my money, right? Those kind of things should not be any botheration to my consumers, right? My consumer should feel free to do a transaction and they know that if anything goes wrong, Uno has solutions to block that transaction, right? So that is a kind of the thing we always need to bring in to allow safety and thought process in our both employees and users to move forward.
Thanks, Diresh. I think it's very insightful. And I think talking about people, we are as strong as our weakest link. That's why I think it's quite important to actually educate and also create awareness to the customers and our internal employees as well. And one of the questions, actually, we have plenty of questions. Today is quite engaging. We have a few questions. But I think one of the main questions that I wanted to highlight to both of you is basically, we're talking about social engineering. We talk about phishing, fraud, scamming, and even business email compromise, right? it's become rampant nowadays. They go various, not just at the senior management, but all the way to the operations, to the middle management in your organization. So I think the question to both of you are really, how do you actually manage this, number one, and how do you restrict it technologically?
So, So yes, you have technology tools and things available to catch a lot of these phishing attacks or social engineering attacks. But one of the biggest thing is, again, people, right? You need to train people to say that, hey, is this email which has come to you, do you think this looks to be a person who you know, right? Does it look to be a business? Does it look a compromised email, right? Does this email address looks fishy? So, and if we are open, if this is a constant education under us, whenever you click on an email, you just don't blindly click on anything. You don't blindly transfer the money to somebody who has asked you to do, right? You need to have that education to people, and then you need to have tools and technologies behind it that even if certain things slips by, right, can we catch it, right? So it's both ways that we need to enable.
I think it's similar to our previous earlier days of email. There's plenty of spam mails, and a lot of email provider, they have created all this algorithm to detect and to actually pick all these spam mails. And then now I think shifting from there, now we need to look into all these phishing, scammings, or even fraud for that matter. How about yourself, Darren? What is your take on in terms of managing all these business email compromise, phishing, and all this social engineering?
Well, I think first of all, it's rampant because it works. And we don't need any more convincing on that. We've seen too many stories. But I think the solution, as we discussed earlier, is going to be multifaceted. The law needs to catch up in this area as well. Not just the technology, not just the people. And I like that idea that we need to train the people, of course. But I would take that one step further, and I like to celebrate the people that catch it. And so as soon as I arrived in this new position, I started getting emails and texts from people like, I got this strange message today. I know it's fake, but what do I do? Well, if the question was, what do I do to prevent it? The answer is nothing. There's nothing we're going to do right now to stop those. I saw something, I knew it was wrong, but I don't know why, and I don't know what. I come out and celebrate them. And the reason I like doing that is because, and I don't think we ever really got too close to, the security culture of a company today, but one of my favorite examples was years ago, a top name security speaker was berating the crowd from the stage. And that's kind of his thing. That's what he was known for. Well, after a few minutes, the crowd got upset and they said, you keep telling us how we're doing it wrong. Do you know anybody who's doing it right? And without blinking, he named a company, and it just so happened to be a company where one of my own proteges went, and he's now the CISO. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I texted him real quick. I said, this guy says you guys rock. Why is that? And he explained that it's because the previous CISO, as he started out in IT and worked his way up the ladder in the company, the further up he went, the farther out his wake of security awareness went. And I think when you think about how do you address cultural issues and people issues, that's part of it. Is we have to be aware that our presence as a security leader is like a boat on the water, and that wake that spreads out we can damage that as well. So we want that to be as effective as possible. And so at this company, one of the things they did was, if somebody would have found a fraudulent email, or they stopped some intruder from coming in the smoking door on the backside, they would make up a badge and with the company logo and give it to them as a sign and a symbol of thank you for your security diligence. And so, yes, we have to train people. Yes, we have to have technologies. Yes, it's going to need some legal support at some point. But in the meantime, the only thing we have is our response. A witty and wise user that spots trouble needs to be celebrated as well, and do it publicly so that everyone else gets it, that this is something. So anyway, that's what I would say. It's multifaceted, and again, I'm going to lean heavy on the people side.
Yeah, I think it's fresh perspective, because a lot of people in the carrot and stick kind of analogy, they always put the stick first before they put the carrot. But for you, a lot of encouragement, motivation that if you manage to pick up. Right? I think there's a very good perspective and very refreshing. We don't have much time. In fact, I think the rest of the question probably they can take it offline from different channel. They can. I think both Diresh and Darren, both on LinkedIn and myself on LinkedIn, you can always reach out to us for more information, or if you have any specific question for us. But for today, I think that's about it. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you.
And great honor to actually sit in the same platform as both of you. I think there's a lot of conversation, a lot of good information as well from the conversation. And I do believe, like I said, Alisa, if in the future you want to have this kind of conversation, I think we need 3 hour slot rather than just 45 minutes. But yeah, it's a great pleasure. Thank you very much, Darren. Thank you very much, Diresh. Hope to see you again on the platform. Back to you, Alisa.
Thank you. So that was such an informative session, and I'm sure our audience have taken away some really great ideas. So thank you again to Izzat, Diresh, and Darren for sharing your valuable insights. Also, special thanks to Edgeo for sponsoring this session. Next, we also have an upcoming webinar next month on how banks, virtual banks, and fintechs can scale their business faster with reduced operational and compliance costs, happening on the 12th of October, 2 p.m. Singapore time. You may send the QR code on your screen to register for the free webinar. Also, if you are looking to join an upcoming event, please feel free to scan the QR code on your screen to secure a free spot to our upcoming virtual event, Seamless Philippines, later this month on the 28th and 29th of September. Lastly, Seamless Asia 2023 is finally back in person on 27 to 28 June next year at Suntec Convention Centre. Scan the QR code for a special launch price of $100 per ticket instead of the original price of $995. With that, thank you once again to everyone for joining us this morning, and we hope to see you soon. Have a lovely day ahead.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Alisa. Stay safe, everyone.